So in like 2005, I get asked to go to the college art department of Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And they're nice enough to give me an exhibit, and I got to talk to the students and learn about them, and they learned about me. After it was all over, I loaded up my truck and I was coming back to Minnesota, but I decided to visit a friend of mine in Marshall, Minnesota, which was east and south of Aberdeen back in Minnesota. So he didn't get off work until 6. I had all this time to kill, so I just decided to just drive down the roads, hopefully find some things to take pictures. Well, I went through some small towns. I started hitting as I went east on Highway 12, but because I was more in this mood of taking pictures and granting myself the time and to be able to just turn on a road on a whim or whatever, I just knew that if I started going east and south, eventually I would be getting to where I had to go, but I had time to kill. So I remember driving down Highway 12 and I see this little bridge off to my right. And it's a rickety old bridge that went over some railroad tracks. And I thought, that's a small little road, that could be cool. And then when I made the turn, I saw there was a sign that said there were a couple of small towns down the road a bit. So I'd already photographed a couple of towns, some nice things that I found in these little towns I was shooting black and white film with my Hasselblad that day. And so anyway, I was driving down this road thinking, what's this? I started having this fantasy thought in my head that I was going to see something great to take a picture. Like one of those little things that come into your head where you're thinking ahead that maybe you can actually foretell the future. And so I'm driving down the road and I go through this corner and I see this, a bunch of turkeys, wild turkeys in this field, not very far out, but if I took a picture of them, they'd just be little black dots in the picture. And I thought to myself, well, that can't be that great photo that I'm feeling like I'm about to find. Then I drove through the town of Butler, which was very interesting. Saw some little abandoned houses there, and back in the weeds and in the trees, and I think I took some pictures there. Then further on down the road and down some dirt road and back, all of a sudden came back to another little town. This one was very quiet. There's a main drag. It was paved in the main street. And there's a little house right there on the main street. I looked over at it. And it was just cute little tiny one-story, tiny cabin-sized house. And I had noticed that because I had first started, and there was these two buildings. There was a little bank and a Legion Hall with an interesting shaped roof, an arched roof. And I stopped to take pictures of that first, and then the town was just intriguing because I felt like I was alone, but it was like a little town. So I wandered around taking pictures of things. There was a gas station and, like I say, this little house. And as I passed the house a couple times, I noticed that there was a little for sale sign in the window, a little handmade for sale sign. I had my first digital pocket camera in my pocket at the time, a little Sony point and shoot kind of camera. So I pulled that out and I remember taking a couple pictures of the for sale sign. And I got back to Minnesota, and a couple days later I went through my slide or my digital files, and I saw that picture, zoomed in on the phone number, and I decided to give the guy a call and just check on what a little house like that would cost in that little town, which had a little memory that was still floating around in my mind. And the house price was remarkably affordable for me at the time, and it got me thinking right away. So I said thank you, and then I talked to my wife Christine and thought about, I just presented it to her. Hey, what are you about having a cabin, not on a lake, but a cabin in a little ghost town. Um, and Christine's from Wyndham, so she grew up on a farm, lived on the flat prairies and stuff like that. So we, she came out, we visited, we saw the place, we got a tour of it, and yeah, it was 2 weeks later from the time I saw it that we ended up, I think, making the purchase of it. So we bought the lily pad. So that's how I ended up having a place in a ghost town, 250 miles from Minneapolis, in the great state of South Dakota.